What's going on, guys? Mark here, back with a new episode for the abstract gradient mesh tutorial. My Instagram is markd_arts, that's marked arts, and on this episode we're going to be continuing where we left off with the eyes. I finished the structure of the colored part of the eye, and what we're going to do is just fill in the color. So I won't explain how we're going to do that now, other than we're going to take our direct selection tool and the eyedropper tool. And if, again, you could refer back to the other videos, but we're going to basically start off this video by coloring in this eye. So let's get to it. We're going to fast forward here. Alright guys, so that about does it for the initial color of the eye, and it looks pretty good. I'd say it's got a nice little blend going on of colors, light and darks, but it's kind of looking a little choppy still. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through that color and blend it together now, and just get that transition of color a little bit more accurate, and clean up the edges of this black bubble here, well, with the pupil. And what I'll probably do with the pupil is I might even make like another layer here and just try we could try feathering a black circle. I don't know if that's going to be better. We could try it. I've never actually done a pupil like that, so might as well give it a go. We can go to select, we can go to effect, stylize, and then we're going to go to just a vector feather. Give this a try and give that a nice little blend right there, kind of like that. And I think that looks pretty good, actually. So I might leave that. I'm going to probably have to mask the top part here to almost like the same edge as this, kind of like that, just so I can hide the subtle edge that you won't even see really. And we could just do a little Control-7 there, and then we might be able to trim. Let's see. Yeah, I was able to trim it. Okay, so now we have that. Let's lock the pupil layer and let's start blending the colors on the eye. Just get rid of this jaggedness. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our eyedropper and direct selection tool, and we're going to select kind of like side to side here and just pull a little bit of the color to each side of these points in a line. And then we're going to do that like kind of back and forth. And that's what that's doing is now it's kind of taking a little bit of tone, a little bit out of a time, changing the hue slightly over time. And then what that's going to do is pretty much going to make it look a little bit more uniform and less gradient meshy, because if you don't do this like my eye was, it was just kind of jagged. Like the mesh is rarely ever too perfect, so what we have to do is we kind of have to blend like that. See how now those colors are a little bit more friendly, I should say, and you can keep doing that a little bit and you get a nice mixture of the tones. You can go to the side, back and forth like that, go up and down, whatever you got to do to really get that blend smooth. So we're going to fast forward this and we'll come back when I have blended the eye to my liking. And as you can see, it looks definitely a lot better now. At least what I had before. I think it's looking a lot more natural. And if I hide the background and all those layers, if I bring back my other eye, this is kind of what we're left with right now. I think it's looking pretty decent. I mean, it's obviously needs some details and maybe like a little highlights in there, but those little details will come eventually and bring it home. If I hide these three layers, what we're kind of just missing is just that watery effect of the eye. So we could work with overlays, like with blending whites, kind of like making little overlay screens, if that makes sense. But I'm going to try and save a lot of that like nitty-gritty detail for later. What I will do right now is the little highlight in the pupil, and also the edges of the colored part of the eye over here need to be a little cleaned up, and the entire edge needs to be blended, and we're going to do that pretty much next, other than the highlight. So let's do a pupil highlight. I feel like I'm just rambling this episode, but we're kind of just shooting from the hip here, just going with the flow. So we're going to start a new mesh, make this color white. Okay, start with a square, and then we're going to control click our eyeball layer, bring this to the center, and now we could do some adjusting to our frame here. I don't know why those lines are kind of disappearing on me like that. Oh, I forgot to make it a mesh. That's probably why. All right, let's do that. That would fix whatever I was complaining about. I'm gonna do this with a mesh because it's got like a lot of different colors in here, and I think it might help if I really get into the detail on this, like the little blue and the brown and to the white transition. I think those little changes might make a difference from a distance, but it might not. But otherwise, I don't mind doing a little extra work. Doesn't need to be a perfect circle either. We're probably gonna feather it, so it looks soft anyway. That's fine. So let's start building our mesh here. So we have a core highlight right in the middle. So I'm gonna leave that like that, but I do want to capture these edges. So let's start making a boundary for the edge of the circle here. So I'm gonna create these 4 points. So now you can see I have these kind of key points, and I'm gonna try and create a circle within the circle, or like a rounded rectangle. This caret tool is gonna be really important. It's gonna allow you to move these edges without messing up any other edges. And using the control key on your keyboard makes it very easy to manage meshes. So I'm gonna keep repeating that for sure, because that's gonna save you a lot of time if you do the keyboard hotkeys correctly. It's like almost impossible if you don't do it. It just takes too long. So there's my core circle within the circle, getting that edge. What I'm gonna do now, this is getting actually pretty detailed for a little small part, but I wanna kind of define the color within this box. Like I have the edge here and I have this edge, but I have really nothing like deciding what's what. Like if I don't put a point over here or in the middle, there's nothing selecting the blue and there's nothing selecting the white. I kind of just have only the in-between tones, and that's not really what we want, because then there's not gonna be a clean, it's not gonna represent what we're really drawing here. So if I do this, now we have an inner edge for color. And if I do this, now we have like a inner boundary for the white color to transition from. And we could probably leave this as white, as like my core color, and then we could start coloring. This is probably fine detail-wise. We're gonna start coloring this in, and then we're gonna feather it, change the opacity, and hopefully it brings some life to the eyeball. So I think I might have shifted this layer by accident. I'm gonna try and bring it, I'm gonna try and line it up again. I don't know what happened, but this layer definitely wanna fix. We're gonna take this layer, we're gonna say we could see through it, and I wanna try and line up the pixels perfectly. And I don't know if I change the size of this or what. Well, maybe the pixels won't line up perfectly. Let's see if I can line it up in a different spot. Let's try a piece of hair, like a little thinner. Is that better? That's definitely a little more accurate, so let's just leave it there. Don't want to mess that layer up. That's kind of what I'm selecting my colors off of. I can go into more detail if I didn't already, if you ask me, but I basically needed to rasterize a layer of all the design I've done with the colors, because it wasn't letting me select the true tone of the image. It was only letting me select the color, like the true hue of the color shapes I have. Like if I selected this anywhere in this pink, it would just be the same pink. It wouldn't be different tones of the skin. So I had to rasterize my layer. That's besides the point. Let's go back to coloring this. All right, so there's pretty much this little ball, which I think looks pretty good from a distance. I think I just got to fix this little spot here. Maybe a little blending there. That looks better. So I think that's important. I think that little blue and yellow tone was nice. So let's do a feather. We'll just do the same. Nope, we can't do the same feather. Let's go back into the feather panel. Let's do 0. Is that too much? No, that's probably fine. So what that leaves us is this as the entire eye. Much more realistic with that highlight. Again, it'll be much more realistic when I add like the little veins, things like that. But I think that looks pretty good. Like right now, I do have to blend the eye's edge for sure into the white part. So let's probably work on that right now. Let's try and get the blending going, which is probably going to require opacity or feathering. So let's see what I have to do here. Kind of just going to take it moment by moment. So this is my layer here. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to take the edges and I'm going to try and perfectly match the color that's directly next to it. And what that's going to do is it's kind of give a natural feather. It's not going to be perfect, but what we could do is mess with opacity and mess with feathering and even like blending masks if you really wanted to go that far with like opacity masks, but I rarely do that. But over here, what I'm going to have to do is I'm probably going to add a point like right here so I can kind of suck in the color of the edge because it was kind of bleeding into the eye a little bit and it was kind of changing the color to where I didn't want it to look like. So we're going to see how that plays out here. Just get this edge to be less harsh and we'll figure out what opacity we need to change. But let's fast forward this part. All right, so if I take a look, it's definitely looking a lot less harsh on the right side. I think just in general, my mesh points are a little like off in terms of roundness. So let's see if I could just kind of fix this somehow. Just a little, it just needs a little surgery. This one's got a little bulge. It's definitely better. I could use a little bit more color around this bottom edge actually. So maybe if I lift up these points a little bit, I can let the color flood in a little more. And then I can probably adjust the color again because I don't know if I pulled, I guess, enough color. I don't know. See over here, I have way more color bleeding in. I'm going to try and make that a little bit more even. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I mean, it's looking pretty soft on the edges now, at least versus what it was before. But I think what I'm still gonna do is I'm gonna see if I can change the opacity of these points and see if it makes a bigger difference in blending. I'm gonna go down to 50% on the edge points and we'll fast forward and see if it makes a big difference. So I'm gonna just select them all. All right, so that's 50% opacity on the edge points. And again, it's looking a little bit softer. I might even go more soft over here. Something about this part of the eye right now that's just throwing me off, so I have to kind of fix it. I guess that's a little better. All right, so I like that. I'm gonna see what it looks like if I feather it, just for fun. You know, why not? Oh, I need to zoom in, I can't really see. All right, let's try this. Could try that. Yeah, that's looking pretty good to me now. Like, look at that, much softer. It still has a defined edge, but without being too sharp like a computer. Let's see what it looks like compared to everything else. And, you know, at quick glance, you probably wouldn't know that was drawn in there. I'm just looking at it from a distance, and it's looking pretty good to me. Again, missing some small details like the veins, like the water effect, which we'll kind of figure out how to do with blending later. And let's see, where's my image? I got to get rid of the eyes. Pretty much the next step, we're going to make the boundary layer, which is going to fill in kind of this area. And we can blend now the white part of the eye to skin, because that's going to be the next kind of major part to get this looking correctly. We're going to probably go all the way like around here, around this whole like imaginary circle that she has around her eye, kind of where I left it open. If I close these out again and bring everything back, we have to fill in, and I'll fix this color too, pretty much the space I left. And then we'll blend that together all in one piece. And then really what's missing is just like eyelashes and things like that. And then it kind of just becomes one solid piece, you know. You can't really tell at that point that it's all separated meshes, because at that point it just becomes so blended together and softened. And I'm just going to stop rambling. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start our new eye layer. And what I'm going to have to do is hide these. I'm going to start just like this, actually, and then I'll fix it later. But we're going to make the right eye base or something. Base. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. As long as I know where it is. And what we're going to do is we're going to make our square. Make sure it's behind everything. Definitely make sure it's white as well, so we don't have to question later what's discolored and what's not. As in when we're filling in the mesh color, you don't want to be like, oh, what color did you fill in? Like, you know immediately that the white is where you didn't add color. Okay, those layers are locked. Okay, those layers are locked. Drop my mesh in the center, and we can control click the eyeball. And we'll fast forward through the construction here, but I'm going to do basically the same thing I always do and kind of build a boundary around our main area of work right now. All right, so let's talk through the structure build a little bit before I fast forward. But these little indents in the eye, the crevices, whatever you want to call them, wrinkles, I might do that with the pen tool later. But for at least, let me set up the colors that are going to lie within there. At least so I have like a kind of like painting. When you have detail, you want to have a base first, in a sense. So you can kind of like add layers and, you know, it's just painting. That's how it is. Similar thing right here. We're going to kind of set ourselves up for later. I mean, I'm going to probably do it as perfect as I can, but then I'll probably do another layer over it just to confirm that I have that kind of defined wrinkle in the face, because these little things, again, are going to make a big difference in the realism. And I try and get better every time. So on this particular project, I'm going to try and be a little bit more detailed than I was on the last one. Even though we're going for an abstract look, I think I want to kind of really go for a hard mix of super realism and then that abstract vibe that I love. But if you actually pay attention to the contour of the way the face works, when you follow this wrinkle, you kind of follows it all the way across this line here. So I'm going to kind of treat the mesh the same way, because the structure of the face matters as long as the mesh is following it. And then we're going to do just like that. This is going to be our center line for the entire kind of wrinkle and divider of color. And if you use your brain, you could see what we're structuring here so far. But that's going to be some of the first lines. Let's finish off this little area, and then we can move on to the rest of the structure over here. But what we're going to do is we're going to create that downward boundary, that hard line, that looking good. And we're going to just probably shift this down. I might move this over to make this a little bit more uniform with the line above it here, just so there's this less stretch. You can see I just pulled it closer towards this is kind of like its best friend up here. I kind of treat all these little points as friends. They're all on the same path. They kind of have to work together. And we don't want to lose track of that this is our middle line. And this is our bottom boundary here. And that's just like a highlight that's kind of blocking it. And now we're going to focus on let's actually bring these in a little bit, fix the lines. We're going to add our top boundary, so let's go over here. Actually, let's fix this line, this little tad. This one's kind of looking like the top one. It should be the middle. It's looking better. We'll fix it as we go. We're going to slap our top line, our top divider for the wrinkle. That's all looking pretty good. That's looking fine. And it kind of doesn't do anything over here. We kind of boxed it in. So we're going to have to continue the line because there is kind of like a shade that goes down. And that's going to be our line here. So this one's going to get a little tough. So this we're going to shift over to keep the trend going. And this one's going to shift over as well to make sure we have that long extended trend of the color. That vertical travel of tone. Kind of makes no sense until you really do it. I'm actually going to pull these more now that I think about it. Now that I set these points up like this, I'm just going to pull it in, pull this in. Okay, and it kind of loses track over here. Let's fix this guy. We're going to bring this guy closer because it kind of is a top boundary. It's kind of be pretty tight, but not as tight as the top because this is a little looser down here, the way the color transitions. It's actually not looking too bad. I'm going to leave that like that. So it's getting a little complex on this one just because of the way I want to set up the detail, but this is complex up here. So far down here is still simple. So as long as you don't add too many points as you go along, you should be, you know, pretty okay to take your time, add the detail you want to add, make sure everything stays uniform. So I think everything's looking pretty good so far. So now that we did the 3 boundaries, the outer and the inside color, we can now close off the entire unit by kind of doing like that. Now that's going to select that orange tone on the skin, transitioning onto the edge of the wrinkle there. And that point is looking pretty good. It already boxed itself off over there. And we are going to need one more in here to get that color. And that's looking definitely nice. This is not looking nice though. Whatever happened to this line. That's good like that. And that's kind of our trend for that outer area. And you can see, I feel like it looks good. What we're going to do now is we're going to put a point down here, that bottom orange tone, see if it follows the trend. This is kind of too tight to the line, same as this. I think this is just too tight now. I think that's looking fine. So now that we have all that sharp detail finished, now I want to see, now we have this like kind of bigger area of skins, and skin is a little smoother, and we want less points there because we want a smoother look. So I'm probably going to drop a point right kind of in the smack in the middle there. And I don't really like how this one went a little close, so I'm going to bring this guy down. And I'm going to bring these guys entirely down, kind of all of them. Fix the lines. You gotta always be editing as you go. If you add too many points without editing, it's gonna be mayhem. Over here is getting a little crazy, but I think in the long spectrum of things, as long as I blend it right up here, it should be fine. I'm gonna fix the trend a little bit, make it a little more uniform, while still following the structure I made. It's like a happy medium of the structure you made and the structure that it creates. There's a problem kind of right here. Everything's converging to this point. I kind of have to separate these arms a little bit so the points can breathe. This is probably the most crazy area of that. So now I kind of lose the path over here. So what we're going to do is shift this guy because it's lost in space and make that follow the trend that it's supposed to, because that is the line that we're working with. Let me make it not gray. Let me take this off gray. Oh, not magenta. I feel like black always works. This is a little broken right now. I can't really see what's happening. There we go. Now, the reason I'm pulling this guy in is because this is the line that should be the center of this skin area. And if you follow the trend all the way down, it kind of closes in, but it should be about over here. And we're going to make sure this trend stays nice. And that's pretty good so far. We're going to need another point kind of to box in this rounded area here. So I'm thinking we can put a point maybe here and then use this as this trend line. This guy is definitely out of place. This one kind of has to be, I would say, like down here. And this got to shift like that. Maybe I'll move this one in. Make it a little bit more even to this guy. Maybe this guy can come in a little. We're getting there for sure. Okay, and this one is for sure messed up. I'm going to take it off black again now that we're in the dark area. Go to cyan or something. We're going to shift the screen around. So this one's kind of interesting. So I want to maintain this trend line, but I don't want to fall off the like the hard edge of the actual design that we have. So let me just see. I want to keep this on the edge, but in a way that I could have enough playroom to keep the same curve I'm supposed to keep. So I'll just leave that right there. We'll fix that later. But that's looking pretty good. And you can see I want to follow this trend line kind of. It really should be close to in here. So let me shift it a little bit more further down. This guy can actually come down too. So it can give me some room to put that about there. Because this guy realistically has to kind of go like that in a way. And then it's going to force us to need more points now. Because basically the middle line has now become the bottom line. And the middle line, because this middle line, this is the real middle line, and it shifted upwards. So now we need a new middle, which makes us put another point there. And as you can see, as long as you keep doing everything within uniformity, the mesh should structure itself properly. I know I'm tripping up over words, I'm kind of changing things, but you know, as you start building the mesh, you kind of have to, you know, think it through. It's not like always a cut and dry process. So that's kind of what you're seeing firsthand, is like me kind of making decisions, building the mesh. And I'm thinking that's looking good. I mean, I'll probably have, let's see. I'm gonna need a point here because realistically, this point falls off. Like, I feel like this black part doesn't actually hit the edge here. There's an orange like gap here between the eyelashes shadow and the skin. And what I need to do is I need a point here to create that kind of box. So that's gonna allow me to like divert off of the main path here. And that's kind of confusing. But what I mean is it's gonna allow us to build the structure of the shadow behind the eyelashes. So now what I really need to do is see how this kind of trends upward, and like that, we're gonna take control of that kind of that detail. Just subtly though. Get that, just make sure that the color on the face just tones, and like it's really about directionality. It doesn't have to be like so dramatic of like color change, but if you keep this trend, see this like small little up trend here, that is actually what's happening in the picture. Like it goes from dark, and darkness kind of shifts up a little bit, and that's really important. You have to kind of capture that that in the mesh. You know, if you don't capture that in the mesh, you're kind of losing out on what makes the photo unique and almost the realism of it. You know, realism is kind of really complex. So if you kind of you take shortcuts, you kind of will see the shortcuts present themselves in the mesh. This is a very complex way to draw, at least on the computer, or replicate on the computer. And this is the best way I know how to do it. So as long as you follow, should be good. So what we're gonna do here, now that we kind of had that upward shadow trend, we're gonna continue filling in the mesh from top down, because that seems to be the way we're doing it. We're gonna need to define that black shape, because this is the edge of the black shape. I'm gonna need to put a line here to kind of box that shape in. And we can leave, that should be fine. We can leave all that right now. And I'm gonna put a point in the middle of the black. And I'm gonna make sure I'm being aware of what's happening down here. This is really important. Gotta make sure I know what I want out of these points. These need to shift a little more. This needs to come in like that. And then this guy needs to stay in the middle. Maybe I'll put this. So it's getting confusing. Let me see what I need to do here. I'm thinking this is gonna have to maintain in the center, and I'm gonna probably leave that on the edge of that shape. Fix up the edge here. This is gonna be a little intense, but I think it'll work out. I'm gonna box in the black there. Let's create that shape. We can move that there. So now we're having a boundary for the bottom of the black. I'm gonna leave the center like that. And what I'm gonna have to do is I need another point like here. Then I have to structure it. I think in this way. We're just gonna roll with it right now. As I'm gonna place more points, it should be more clear about what's messed up. I might be messing up. I don't think I'm messing up. We're gonna take it slow though, because I really want to get this right. But this is gonna shift down more, give that some more breathing room. This is fine. All right, it's looking better now. Looking better for sure. Well, this guy has two buddies coming off of it like that, which is probably gonna mean we're gonna have to put a point here to break that up. This is gonna allow us to define that skin. Kind of like this darker area, that's like the actual color that's gonna be portraying the skin there. It's eventually you'll start to imagine what it's gonna look like just by looking at the lines. And that's where really the skill set comes in, especially in 3D modeling and things like that. But I definitely need a point probably here, just because there's too much negative space in between these points. It's just gonna look strange. It won't flow right in the mesh, so I need a little bit more detail in there. And we can leave that right now. So it's looking pretty good now. I was freaking out about this over here, but now that I look at it, it's looking pretty good. So I think I might add a point here just to sharpen off that shadow a little bit more, because I think it's going to be too smooth. So that's fine. This guy I think needs to move up a little, and then this guy needs to move up a little. This line needs to go like this. All right, I think that's, again, I think we're just moving along here. We're moving along. I'm starting to see a color change down here. So let's box off that color change and then put a point here to start that color change. And then it smooths out. So what we're gonna do is we're probably gonna start to address the fact that it's getting smoother on the bottom here. And be very careful about where we're placing points. I'm gonna just clean this up. I don't have to worry about what's really under the eye. It's gonna be covered. But I still want the shape to make sense. So these guys need to go down. As you can see, like these are all boundary points. Their job is to all be a boundary. Okay, you can see what we did there. We're starting to construct every piece of the eye. Let's start adding some more points. Let's finish this up. I'm probably gonna add one point here. I just think it needs a little bit more detail. I'm gonna fix up these lines. All right, that's fine. That's looking pretty fine. We're getting there. So the first problem I see, I'm gonna start on the left. I feel like, I don't know why, but we have no definition of this orange to white highlight transition on the skin here. So basically we're going to box off this highlight like that. I would say more or less like, actually no, we'll put a point here right now. And that's gonna be the center point for the orange. Let's focus on that first. So this guy's gotta shift it up. And I'm gonna make this follow the center of the orange skin tone. But this guy, you might ask, what is this one for? This is now the boundary of that orange tone. And it's gonna follow the boundary of the eyeball, as you can see. It's now taking that job because it's the closest point there. And you can see that we're just gonna clean this up, straighten out these guys out so they follow the trend of the orange. This one is way too close to that point. So is this one is not correct. And then it seems to be losing the rest of the mesh lines as it folds into this point right here. You can see that the line trends kind of right into that upward area that we made already, which leads us to making another point to finish the rest of this middle area. You can see it kind of gets nothing over here. So there needs to be a point right there. And then these will kind of now continue that trend for you. And there seems to be a small issue now, basically. I have no upward eye boundary, so we're gonna have to really focus on creating that right now. Which should be pretty fun. So I'm going to put a point right here. That's going to start to define my edge. And now I'm going to use that as my edge to work my way back to where I was just upward. Like, this is going to work my way back up to what I was just editing at the top of the eye. So I have a definition for the edge. That's going to lead me to success, hopefully, in this part of the mesh. Okay, so you can see what we're getting there. Now we have the edge for that eye. We're starting to construct the entire boundary. Now these guys have to come down. That's the eye boundary. This is also an eye boundary. And that's because I needed to continue, since I already have it over here, I needed to continue that trend. So I had to shift this guy into that edge. What I am going to do, though, I'm going to break this rule, and I'm going to put this point here, and I'm probably going to move these guys over, just like this. So now that makes more sense. But what I don't like is how this one is attached to an edge, to a middle, to an edge. That's kind of confusing me a little bit. So maybe this one actually has to be lower, and then this one is like that, and then this one like that. Yeah, that's exactly what needs to happen. So I was wrong. So this is probably the first major problem I ran into right now. I think this is actually messing with my brain. I have this going to an edge. This goes to a middle. But I think really what the middle is really this guy. So this is really an edge, I think. And I think that fixed it. Let's fix the points and see if that's like what needed to happen. That's my edge boundary. This is that. This is this. I think that should work. I mean, I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's just the way the mesh kind of worked out. And I'm probably going to leave it like that for now. I'll fix it if I need to. I don't think, again, it's correct. I think this looks a little weird. Maybe I'm missing a point. Maybe if I add a point. Like, I don't know what this point is doing, kind of. I'm very confused about this one guy. Okay, I added a point and kind of messed with it a little bit. I was just unhappy about the way it looked a little. Even though it probably wouldn't have made a big difference. I'll figure out if I made it worse later on. But this is kind of where I'm at right now. So I'm going to just fast forward through the rest of the construction of the eye as you kind of watch me do the upper half. So it's pretty much implied for the second half. So you can watch me do it in fast forward. Alright guys, I think that is what I'm going to leave it as for now until I color it, because I'm really just not sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure I have like my whole structure here complete, but you know, I really don't know what's really not correct until I color it. So I think I'm going to end the episode here, and we will color the right eye base layer skin on the next episode, leading into, I guess from there I'm going to transition into the left eye, or if you really want to talk in correct forms, that is the real right eye and this is the real left eye. But for the sake of the picture, this is the right eye, this is the left eye. And maybe next episode we can finish the left eye, but we'll definitely start it. And once we finish the eyes, it will have a lot of the core structure above the face done. We can do the nose, and then once those three things are done and blended together, then I could fix maybe the skin up here, and then we can blend everything together, and we can almost call it finished on the top half of the face. And pretty much the bottom half is done except for the lips. And that's pretty much it. I mean, other than the detail and the hair, I mean, this is not the biggest project, but it still takes a ton of time because it's gradient mesh, and that's why you're here watching it, because it's very hard and it takes forever. And I think I've been recording for over an hour at least, and a lot of this is going to be fast forwarded, so hopefully compacted into a more precise video. I know I talk a lot in this video, but I feel like the reason you guys are watching this is because I'm actually speaking about what I'm clicking. I feel like I can fast forward, time lapse this, and you can watch it and kind of get information on it, but you're not really understanding like what I'm thinking when I'm doing it. So I try my best, as stupid as I may sound, to kind of just say what I'm thinking when I'm working on it. So my name is Mark Damati, guys. That's Instagram, Marked Arts. It's MARKD_ARTS. Give me that like, give me that subscribe, comment. I will answer questions if you have about Illustrator. I am not shy. I will be in the comments. But stay tuned for more of these episodes, and on to the next one.